Where's the other one? This one's not.
Okay, so we are able to proceed whenever you're ready, Your Worship.
Okay, we'll call the meeting to order. I don't have an agenda.
You need to adjust your camera. Sorry, Dave.
Okay.
There you go. Yep.
Yeah. I'm good. How are you?
Okay, the first order of business is the election of chair and vice chair. So I need a mover and seconder that Mayor Mennel be appointed the chair of the Aylmer Police Costing and Ad Hoc Working Committee, and that Deputy Mayor Jaguar be appointed the alternate chair of the Aylmer Police Costing Ad Hoc Working Committee.
I'll move.
Moved by Serta, second by Widner. All in favor?
Just a show of hands, I think there's not that many.
Okay.
Thank you.
Motion carried. Disclosure of pecuniary interest and general nature thereof. Nothing. Review of the committee mandate. Michelle, are you doing this?
Mr. Chair, this is just the council resolution that was passed that authorized this group to be established and sets out the information on what we're hoping to achieve. There isn't any additional information. I just put it here for the committee's reference as we move forward.
Okay. Correspondence and reference documents.
And again, Your Worship, or sorry, Mr. Chair, all of this information, I think the committee members have seen at some point or another. We can run through it, or like I said, we can attempt to answer any questions. There are a couple of things that are new. The last article, or the last item on that correspondence, is a newspaper article from the Simcoe Reformer that speaks a little bit to some current challenges that the OPP have been facing in terms of staffing and some concerns of other municipalities. The consultants had forwarded this information to us just as reference as we're doing our ongoing review. The Aylmer Police Annual Report and Strategic Plan are there as well, and of course the Elgin OPP Annual Report. So just some background in terms of the types of services and their response times and things like that. Otherwise, the other information is all stuff you've already seen in previous council meetings. So this is just some background information, again, so that when the committee starts to deliberate, you've got some resources available to you. But I'm planning necessarily to go through the whole thing unless the committee members wish to have a more detailed discussion on any of the items.
Okay, so was there anything of the correspondence that anyone wishes to make comment on or question? Go ahead, Dominique.
Yep, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, just a couple of questions for the, I think it was for the strategic plan for the Aylmer Police, where they talked about some statistics on satisfaction, and they talk about 94% or 85%, but I could not find anywhere in the document how many respondents there were. So I think it would be crucial to find that out, because we need to know, does this represent really the entire Aylmer population? Like every resident actually responded? Because there's a bit of a false claim in there. We have to be careful, because it actually says 87% of residents, and then 94% of residents, which,
is it residents or residents responded? Yeah.
Yeah, so I'd like to.
I don't have that information today, but we can certainly reach out and get that for sure.
That would be great. And I'll comment on the co-reformer article, just to say that to be careful that this is not, like, we need balanced representation in the media, because if you look at this article, it makes it look like there's an OPP recruitment shortage. So I did a little bit of digging, and most municipal police services are facing the same issues. There's just a shortage all around. They're just from what I've read very superficially so far. It's just difficult to recruit, whether you're a large city, a small town, OPP, there's vacancies all across the board. So I don't want us to be misled to say that OPP has more vacancies and more difficulty than perhaps Aylmer.
Yeah, if I might as well, dealing with the police college all of the time, the OPP for the next future has 100 seats on every basic cadet training program. So they're doing everything they can to fill any shortages they've got. And more to your point, Deputy Mayor, Elgin detachment is completely full. There's no missing spots. 61 is their total staffing level, and that's what they have. So I would agree. I think that was a misleading article, and that's not Elgin. Not what we're seeing in Elgin, I guess.
Okay, any other questions or comments on the correspondence? Okay, let's move on to discussion about the additional background information required. I know there was a few questions at our last meeting on the proposal. Michelle, have we got enlightened on those?
Mr. Chair, I don't have any additional information. We had talked about it, but I don't have anything other than what's already been communicated. So I was hoping that members would be able to relay some information, or if other council members, I think I had mentioned at the meeting when we talked about this, that if there were specific concerns or issues for them to forward them to us so that this group would have them. I haven't received anything from anyone to date. So I'm looking for some guidance from the committee members with respect to this, as well as their thoughts when we get to the next item on the public consultation strategy.
Okay, well, Mark, you said you had some phone calls about concern.
Yeah, that's right. And I've had some more since. I haven't talked to one person that thinks it's a good idea. I still think there's a lot of bad, what comes out, there's a lot of bad blood between the township and the town. And that's historical. There's been people that have had to deal with the Aylmer police and they were never satisfied with it. And if it's going to cost $50,000 more, is that a correct number?
No. I mean, the initial year, year one, it was the startup cost is more, but as you go down on the next 9 years, actually it's cheaper by the tune of about $200,000. But
the servicing we're getting, I don't see where it will be any better because, okay, I was at an accident the other night on 45 on Springfield Road. There was 3 OPP cruisers there. So if that was an Aylmer event looking after it, we wouldn't probably get 3 cruisers there. We would get 2 maybe, because they're not going to leave the town unprotected.
I don't know. I don't know.
No, I don't either. That just shocked me. There were 3 ambulances there, 2 ambulances there, and there was all kinds of police. So nobody's complaining about the service. I guess that's one thing. Have you anybody else had any complaints about the service with the OPP?
No, that's not why we're looking at this. I was looking at this to have more officers on call, which this report takes. The OPP cannot give us the same level of service that the Aylmer is proposing. To have an officer on call at all times in Malahide, that the OPP cannot do that. And the second one, as I said before, there is savings going down the road. My concern is that potentially, and the OPP will not advertise this, but especially on weekends or holidays, often there's 2 cruisers in Elgin County. And if one's in Port Borough and one's in West Lauren, and you have a call, you're just going to have a substantial delay. Rick?
Got a comment. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yesterday or Saturday, I was in Port Bruce, and there was an OPP cruiser at the bridge waiting for the light to change, and there was an OPP cruiser in Copenhagen. Now, my big question is, Aylmer keeps saying that they're going to have one full-time officer in Malahide Township. The OPP already says they have one in Malahide, one in Port Burwell. So I'm trying to see what the difference is. And most of the time when you need OPP, you have always have more than one cruiser. And if Aylmer is just giving you one and there's a problem in the township, well, what are they going to do? They're going to send the one from Aylmer out, so leave Aylmer unprotected, like Mark said, or are they going to have to call the OPP anyway? Like, that's my thing, is every time we're going to be short something, the Aylmer police are going to have to call the OPP for support anyways. I don't see the advantage of it. And like Councilor Whitner said, most people I've talked to say, look, if it's not broke, don't fix it. And they're quite happy with it, and they're quite happy with the present AC. So I don't know, that's just my point.
Any comments, Brent or Michelle?
Your worship, what we've been advised is that at any point in time, there'll be 3 officers on duty with the Aylmer model. It would be 2 would be stationed typically in the town of Aylmer, with 1 dedicated to Malahide. But we've had discussions and those questions have come up. What if? So if there was a need to have 2 cruisers in Malahide because of an incident or an event, or if there was a need to have 3, those resources would be redeployed from the town into Malahide to deal with that particular incident. And if we talked about, okay, what if all 3 are dealing with a motor vehicle collision on Wilson Line, and all 3 of them are there because of that and need to, what happens then if there's a call in Aylmer, or if there's a call in the south part of Malahide and no vehicles left. So we had those discussions when we spoke with the Aylmer police, and they said the same thing as they do right now, is if they need backup, they do call on the OPP to provide that backup, and that takes place. The same would happen here. If there was a call in the town of Aylmer when all their resources were deployed elsewhere, they would ask the OPP to respond, and the OPP would respond accordingly. So it would not be a situation where we would not have service. It would be a situation where potentially delay in service or in arrival of an officer. But we've been advised that in all instances, and Brent, you can correct me if I'm wrong during the discussions, but we've been advised that that backup current model currently exists. And we've been advised as well that, in fact, actually there are occasions when the Aylmer police actually respond where the OPP have not been available to be able to do so, or there's been a significant delay. So Aylmer police actually have been pulled from the town of Aylmer to respond to areas outside of the town of Aylmer to assist the OPP on occasion. It may not be frequent, but I'm told that that has occurred in the past.
Is there a charge for that?
Currently, there is not.
Would that continue as a no charge?
The province has suggested that at some point in the future, reciprocal arrangements may be billable, but currently they're not, and there is no, currently it doesn't take place, not just in Elgin, but in other. So for example, if the OPP have to respond in to assist, let's say the City of London, or the City of London has to respond into Middlesex County to be able to assist, there are no billable charges back and forth is what I'm told currently. So it's not unique to this situation. There are other municipal forces where the OPP provides assistance and does so at this time at no cost. Brent, is that not the information we received?
Yep, that's it. The caveat to that being public safety or officer safety in jeopardy for them to pull in from other departments, and then yes, that would happen. So I guess the only thing different would be they were at a car accident and we're requiring to close the or deal with the participants in the car accident. That's not deemed a public safety or officer safety issue, and they probably wouldn't be responding to assist in that unless they have a form of a reciprocal agreement in place, like a signed reciprocal agreement. And I think Aylmer was talking about doing that with the city of St. Thomas, where they would actually have, because I think that's who they're looking at for dog services. I think they had mentioned that. And so anything Aylmer doesn't currently have, I think they're doing an agreement with St. Thomas firstly, and then the OPP after that.
And if I can jump in there, Mr. Chair, through you, the one thing that we have been also advised is that the cost of those reciprocal agreements, or the cost if there was any billings that took place, would fall on Malahide. That it would be a cost to the Aylmer Police Service. The Aylmer Police Service, the quote that we've received, or the costing model, is what they've indicated to date, is that this is the cost for them to provide adequate policing to Malahide. And so we will pay that amount, and how they deliver that, what resources, what additional costs they might have to incur as a result of delivering policing models, was going to be at their cost, is what they've indicated to us at this stage. Now, a final contract and agreement hasn't been negotiated, but at this stage, that was how it has been initially structured. So that if they have to do something different in order to make sure that we have the appropriate policing resources, then that will be on them to be able to provide.
Go ahead, Rick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't know like how this is going to work, but I think the consultants had said that the town or the Aylmer Police were guaranteeing a 3% increase. And anything over and above that, the town was going to look after. And Michelle just said the same thing, that if there's cost overruns, the town will make up the difference. Well, what does the town of Aylmer think about that? Like, are they gonna go for that? That if the costs are 4% higher, that they're gonna start subsidizing Malahide policing?
It's their proposal that they've submitted to us. So the town of Aylmer has seen this costing proposal already. Their council saw it and was satisfied with it, and then authorized it to be sent to us for our review. So their council is aware of it.
Okay, that's good.
Arun, have you done the savings over the 10-year period on projected increases between the OPP and Aylmer?
Yes, Mr. Chair, Michelle and I did look at those numbers, and I would echo what the consultants have said, that if the town is able to guarantee us just a 3%, which is like a cost of inflation increase, then it definitely is financially more beneficial to Malahide than what OPP is currently costing us. And but that's where the report that we brought to council qualified it, in terms of all these estimates and calculations are based on the information we have so far. For example, the numbers they had provided to us were for 2020. So the wages, when it actually starts, is probably going to be 2021 wages. So will that mean very different numbers? Or are there any other costs that Aylmer would want to include in the agreement? Those are the fine-tuning pieces that we need to discuss with the town. And I would say, if we had a list of questions as a committee to discuss with them, then we would actually be able to arrive at a next step kind of the process to now have more clarity, exactly the questions that Mark or Rick have brought up. We could have firm answers to those, because I think there's, the way I see it, there's benefit to having the town's policing because it's a local presence. It's people that the local residents know. So having those faces around town or in community groups, and I'm not 100% familiar with the model, Brent can probably speak more to it. But that, and with the, at this point, at least it appears it's a no-cost support still available from OPP. So it's looked like the best of both worlds at this point. But again, it's based on what we know at this point in time. So that's why there were estimates and assumptions and points to be negotiated and discussed with the township.
But what's the average cost increase over the last 5 years from the OPP to the township? Because I did some quick calculations and it was 2%.
Yes, that's right. It's roughly about 2%. But what we heard from the consultants is that the OPP apparently has several different pots of money, so they move things around and make it look good for us. And therefore, it has not been significant so far. But if you, when they switched their model in, I believe, 2015, if you look at it now, in the last 2 years, the increase is a little bit higher. But because when you do an average over several years, it averages out to 2%. So, but then if you look at it just in the last 2 years, it could actually go a little higher than that.
So there's a few things that I have some reservations on. I actually ended up calling the chief superintendent for Western Region. And right now he's on a provincial committee looking at OPP modeling. And one of the things that he said that stuck out to him with the Aylmer proposal is Aylmer is proposing 5 constables for Malahide. And the OPP model as it stands right now, so they do it based on a zone. So as Malahide and Bayham are one zone, they actually assign 2 officers. There is 6.84 officers per zone.
And I need a RM.
Based on a 24/7 model. So he's saying you don't even have what you should be getting in the model that they're proposing. I thought, well, that was rather interesting because that information never came forward to us. I kind of did, that was a little, I don't know. I'll be quite honest, I thought the consultant geared it completely towards Aylmer and really discounted what the OPP was offering or didn't have enough of the right questions. And again, I know from us dealing with them, we are never in a shortage of people. We always have enough officers there to handle the situation. With the 4 people that had to be rescued, the OPP were down there and had all the zone and command structures set up before we arrived.
Yep.
Seamlessly.
Is it just me or are you breaking up, Brent?
Just you so far.
Yeah, I can hear him good. Well, I'm right next door.
Mr. Chair, you may wish to mute your microphone, just if it cuts out the background in your office, then it might not break up.
So those were some of my concerns and how we deal with them. The other part being is they are borderless policing. So if there's a shortage in this zone, they come from Oxford or Norfolk, or they come from Middlesex. So they have GPS transponders on every one of their vehicles and dispatch knows their location. So if it's quicker to deploy a Oxford vehicle into Elgin, in our particular end of Elgin, as opposed to say the car coming from the St. Thomas area, then they do that. So we've never experienced a time lag. And then as far as having their specialty teams, this weekend, we had their ATVs out. So I guess my concern is I just don't see the same level of service that we're receiving. And I don't think they necessarily even see it in their reporting. I don't think the OPP report properly enough for us to determine that they're here more often or they're here with special units and so forth. And they're doing themselves a disservice. And that's one of the comments I made to the chief superintendent. But those are just some of the things that have come from me. And again, knowing that they have 100 seats with OPC for the future for every basic cadet intake, doing something at least about these shortfalls, but we don't have shortfalls in Elgin. And, you know, the other part, I guess, as well, we're owning those assets, but we're only paying for a service. We don't own the assets. Their proposal, We don't have a voting body on their police services board. What the consultants didn't point out is Peterborough Lakefield went from OPP modeling to their own, and Peterborough and Lakefield are in a fight over who controls the police. So I don't know that it just, to me, it really seemed more directed in one, towards the one model as opposed to giving validity to what we already have with the OPP. My 2 cents.
Sorry, I also wanted to ask you, Brent. There has been some discussion around changes to the policing legislation. So from that aspect, would it be perhaps more sensible to stay with OPP rather than jump ship, and then Aylmer has to manage the changes to legislation, and it may hit us later on? To see that at all?
Well, when Michelle and I had the conversation with the ministry representative, there are changes coming to the Police Services Act, although no one really knows what they are. And they've been put on hold now due to COVID. Right, Michelle?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, if I may, then I think indeed that's what is coming up to me, is that we're doing a comparison shopping exercise, and anyone who's bought anything significant recently will know that most companies go through great lengths of putting a very detailed chart and listing all of the different specs. And I feel that's what we don't have. We don't have apples to apples. And I think the consultants were at a disadvantage because I don't think they were given the mandate to seek from OPP the equivalent information, including satisfaction rate, including, so as far as additional background information, that's what I would like to work on, is all the specs, including, and I'm sure we'll come up with more and more criteria, but including the average age of their workforce, or the or vacancy and time to fill vacancies. And so all of these different criteria that we're coming up in a little bit sort of random fashion, I would really love to set that up, and then to ask both parties to help us fill in the blanks. And until everybody feels like including 2 or 3, what if scenarios. So what would be the ultimate cost of a major incident under the Aylmer service, under OPP service, and to do like I said, a couple of what ifs, so that ourselves, as well as when we go to the public, then they're able to see, okay, now I get this, or in the future, this is what OPP can provide. And this is how much it's costing. This is the costing projected over 10 years. And then be able, I think everybody's very familiar with that format of, comparing specifications.
No.
Any comments, Michelle? You've been involved, you and Brent have been involved with this.
Yeah, a couple of things. I think there is, I think we can obtain some of the background information. I think some of the items that the Deputy Mayor suggested might be a bit challenging, and I'm not sure are entirely relevant. So for example, we pay an annual cost based on per household to people, and we would be paying an annual cost per household to Aylmer Police. So in terms of determining whether or not a particular incident cost a certain amount of money, that's covered in your annual cost. So whether or not it ends up being an incident that takes a half hour for one officer to be able to remedy, or whether it takes an incident a day and a half with 10 officers, we pay for policing based on a household cost. There is some reconciliation done But I would argue at this stage that we've seen it's been relatively nominal in affecting the overall costs for the municipality. So I think it actually will be very challenging and may not be entirely relevant to pick certain events and do that. So just that one part of it. However, having said that, I think there absolutely is an opportunity to be able to gain some more information in terms of some additional comparables. So I don't have those because I'll be very frank, policing is not my specialty. I haven't been involved with that in the past. So determining what specifics or what comparables we need, I'm not sure I'm the best person to be able to decide that. But if there is certain information that hasn't already been gathered in the background documentation that's been provided, we can certainly reach out and get that. But as staff, I would ask for the committee members to identify more of those specifics.
Go ahead, Dominique.
So one question I had is, do we currently have under the OPP contract a list of what we're getting and those specs of that contract? Like how many officers and how many, and like what special units we have access, like what's their sales pitch, like not the current one, but the one that we know we're getting now. Does that exist?
There is a contract with the OPP. It doesn't get into those level of details. However, the OPP as a whole has resources, and certain ones Elgin has, some others. A lot of the information and a lot of the resources actually contained in their annual report. So they do identify the vast majority of the services they provide, the infrastructure. They talk about in their annual report that they submit to council each year. They talk about the number of officers they have, the type of hierarchy they have, the type of, that they have a boat and, those types of things. So information is available, and I would suggest that the vast majority of it is there. If there's things that aren't in that you want, then, we can look to obtain that. But I think a lot of that detail is already provided to council. In terms of the actual contract, I can certainly share that with the committee, the OPP contract that's available very simply. We passed it by a bylaw a couple of years ago, so I can share that. But I think most of it already exists and we already have to some degree.
Yeah, so often it's because it exists in multiple places, it's a matter of pulling it together and in a comparison.
Rick?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's just Aylmer's big thing when they made the proposal was that we were supposed to get better representation from the police. Okay, and the thing is too, when you think about it, the OPP, they have, I think they do snowmobile trails. They have guys that do that. They do the ATV trails. They have a boat and all that stuff. These are all things that Aylmer can't supply us with. And so is it okay to see a cop on the road more often, but not on the water or something like that? I don't see a big advantage. And if we do need a boat and we do need a thing, we've got to call the OPP anyway. It just somehow I'm confused that way, that we want to save money and yet we're going to have to call these guys back most of the time anyway. Because Aylmer's not going to buy a boat. Aylmer's not going to buy a skidoo. Aylmer's not going to get an ATV. All they're going to do is drive up and down the road. And that, to me, isn't worth the savings. Because we need policing all over the township, not just on our roads. So I don't see an advantage, big time. But it'd be nice to see what can be done. I don't think we know that yet.
Michelle, any comments on Rick?
I don't believe they have that infrastructure. What they've indicated is that they will obtain through reciprocal agreements whatever resources we need. but I don't have any more information than that. I will be honest, when we were discussing, we did discuss the boat situation when Brent and I met with them. We did not discuss, I don't believe, ATV or snowmobile access or anything. That was something we didn't contemplate at the time.
I have a question, I guess.
Go ahead, Mark.
And if we did have a major event, like I say, we had a murder, and I know what the amount of time those takes. How would Aylmer handle that when, say, it's a month's work to try to solve it? Are they going to use all of their own staff? Would we be hiring the OPP as a backup? I don't know that.
The OPP does handle homicide investigation in the province when local municipal force does not have it. So they would be providing that for sure with Aylmer. You know, they wouldn't be required in London or St. Thomas, but maybe in other smaller municipal departments, they do in fact provide that. If you recall the Bandito murders,
Right.
That was huge. The OPP had to deploy virtually hundreds to do that entire investigation. So it is their mandate to do it. And I don't believe there's any additional cost that comes that way. But the reality is you're calling the OPP to do it.
Right. And I guess there was a statement, there's a shortage of OPP for training. I don't believe it. I mean, Brent, we know one fellow that was in our fire department, and he tried for years and years to get on with the OPP. Finally succeeded, but ended up going way up north with a 5-year contract just to retain him up there. So I can't believe there's a shortage for that.
And we don't have a shortage locally. That's why I was a little bit surprised by the article that was put forward from the Simcoe reporter. I mean, that may in fact be an issue with Norfolk or possibly Haldeman as well. But Elgin's fully staffed. So it's sort of a moot point when it comes to our specific situation.
Right. Thank you.
Any other questions or comment on additional background information? So there's been several things that have come up, Michelle, that need to be answered before we can even think about going to the public. So can you and Brent address that before we have our next meeting?
Your worship, I'm not entirely sure what those items are. I know there's been a request for some additional detail for comparison purposes, but as I indicated, I don't know exactly what type of comparison there is. So, and how, honestly, I'm not sure how to come back to you. I'll be really candid there. So I really was hoping to get more direction from this group in terms of the level of detail or the specifics, because as I said, the information is there, and I appreciate that the deputy mayor has indicated it's in multiple sources, and I get that, but we could spend a couple of months on trying to pull every single level of detail, every single thing together, and still may not answer the questions you have. So there is a lot of information that could be pulled together, and I'm not sure whether or not there would be a specific advantage, or quite honestly, whether you want to pull Brent and I away from everything else that we're working on to be able to delve into it in that level of detail. So I really was hoping to get some more specifics from the committee in order to allow us to move forward and give you the information that's going to be relevant.
Okay, well, Rick had two questions, one on the ATV trails and the snowmobile trails.
Yep.
And Dominique, have you got a specific question that you can have on more information?
Well, my specific request is a chart. We cannot go to the public with 25 different documents and expect the public to make an informed decision, or not decision, but to express an informed opinion to us. So my request, my specific request, is to consolidate all the comparators. I will volunteer to start the chart, and if staff can help with filling the blanks, and if there's a blank that is not fillable, then we'll know, but we can say this information is not available. So if that helps, I will volunteer. And then, like I said, typically my experience with those charts is that as we review it, then we realize, oh, we should also compare this and we should also compare that. And so the chart will evolve when it circulates through the committee, but I can get it started.
Oh, we lost the mayor, but I think that would be helpful. Only, and I said, I'm not trying to be difficult. I'm just not entirely sure because we have had, Brent and I have had some discussions, and a lot of the information is more verbal with some of the parties. So yeah, again, if there's a chart to be filled, we can try to pull that information together and assist with answering those questions. And similar to, you know, your one question about a cost of an incident, we can determine through that chart process as well whether or not that really is going to be valuable or not in the overall scheme of doing an evaluation. So if the deputy mayor is interested in doing that, then I think that would be helpful. Oh, the mayor's calling me. One moment. Hello? Did you get kicked out?
The deputy mayor takes over.
Yes, I can. 1 second here. Yeah, let me resend you the invitation and then you can do a telephone inquiry. And in the meantime, the deputy mayor will continue to act as chair until you get back on. Yep, no worries. Okay, thanks. Sorry, Deputy Mayor, if you want to assume the chair, he's going to try to telephone back in again.
Sure. Councillor Whitner?
Oh, sorry.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Like Brent's got a lot of good information right now. I don't think it took him months and months to do it. I don't think our consultant took months and months to do it. But information like that is really what we need to know, because I guess what Brent's alluding to is there is no cost savings and there is no better service. If we can get that double checked, I mean, that's a good comparator, and I appreciate that he took time to do that. The consultants, I don't know how much time they did spend on it, but this seemed really leaning towards the Aylmer police. And that's fine, but that's all the information they had. Maybe that's what it worked out to.
Yeah, well,
I'm not quite so sure. Thank you.
I'm certainly at an advantage in that I deal with them all the time. So I certainly know that other staff are not going to have the same relationship because they're not, you know, not necessarily dealing with the police. Hopefully you're not dealing with the police as much as I would be. But yeah, I'm happy to take whatever direction Michelle and they'll give me as far as what information is needed.
Yeah. Comment?
Councillor Cerna?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I used to deal with the police a lot more in my younger days than I do now, but I just want to like to help Michelle out a little bit. Like, I keep hearing what Aylmer can do for us, but I'd like to know what they can't do for us. And that's, like I said, with the voting and this, that, next thing. The other thing is I do realize domestic disputes or something like that. Or the one time I tried to call Agricor and ended up getting 911. And they wouldn't let me leave the farm until they came out there, but they had to come out with 2 cruisers. Not just one, but 2. Well, how's that going to happen? We only got one guy here. Do I get an Aylmer cop and an OPP or whatever? Like, there's just too many unanswered questions. And I just want to know what Aylmer can't do for us. Like, I keep hearing what they can do. I just want to know what, like, they don't have a boat. I know that these are the kind of things that they can't do, you know, and stuff like that. So I think that's probably a pretty good start right there.
Yeah, and I think that's a good way of framing it. I mean, in any change, I can't think of any example where whenever you change something, you always gain and lose. So it's a matter of being truly and fully informed as to what is to be gained, what is to be lost. There is no way that there's not going to be that kind of trade-off. So we just have to make a really smart.
Well, and what I can't see doing is changing from the OPP to go to Aylmer, that every time there's a problem or a situation that we have to call in the OPP again. Then why even bother make the change? And you know, they don't have an accident reconstruction guy in Aylmer anymore, and there's a lot of things that they don't have that we're going to end up calling in. And if we keep calling the OPP all the time, with this new police modeling, I'm almost certain that there's gonna be a charge for it. And then if Aylmer guarantees the 3%, and all of a sudden it's 5%, you go to Aylmer and say, hey, guess what? We're way over budget. You guys gotta cough up. That's not gonna last very long either. So I think we really gotta be cautious here.
Councilor Widner?
Yes, thank you. Just have a question maybe for Arun. The 3% that we keep talking about, is that a 3% year over year or 3% of the budget?
3% of the budget is what I've understood that
So the
their
budget-
calculations are showing, the numbers that they have included in their proposal.
But if their budget
So-
went up drastically, we'd pay more?
No, 3% year over year.
Yeah, it's year over year.
Yeah,
It's-
so if we're
so-
paying $100, next year it's going to be $103, the next year it's going to be $106, the next year, what's,
So it would be an agreement where the budgeted amounts are noted, and so that's why it's an agreed amount. It's neither a budget nor an actual. It's the agreed amount. And that's why there's security to an extent, because they are promising X number of dollars, whatever the actual may be.
right,
Okay, so it's every 3% year over year. So if their
Yeah.
budget tripled, it wouldn't matter. We still only pay 3% of what?
correct.
Yes.
For the first 10 years. So
Yes.
Right.
something you need to note as well. So if for whatever reason, they did end up losing at the end of the 10 years, and let's say they were short whatever amount of money, we have to renegotiate a contract after 10 years. So if they had lost over the course of the 10 years, then they would probably, I'm speculating, of course, but they would probably be looking to make up some of that lost revenue with a contract going forward. But having said that, the township's under no obligation to renew a contract. You have the ability as well to go back to OPP even after the first 10-year period if you're not satisfied for whatever reason. The understanding is that the commitment would be for a 10-year period in order to allow Aylmer to acquire whatever resources it needs to deliver the policing service to Malachi. So they're asking for a 10-year commitment for that purpose.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Rick.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. What is the starting point for the budget? I know the first year they're gonna wanna hire 5 more constables. They gotta buy a new cruiser and this, that, and next thing. Where is the starting point for the 3%? Is it based on the first year's investment, or is that taken out of the equation? Like, where do you establish what you're basing your 3% on? Because you know the first year is gonna be, the startup costs are gonna be phenomenal.
Right,
You don't
and that's where the difference between, even though OPP has a 2% increase and Aylmer has a 3% increase, we will eventually see savings, because the first year, their proposal had noted that the costs are going to be $1,087,000, so $1,087,000 for 2020. And the OPP's current charge is $1,038,000. So right now for year 1, they are going to be more expensive. But in the second year, because there aren't those capital costs, they go down to, according to their proposal, they go down to $968,000. Whereas OPP would go 2% of $1,038,000. So we go at a higher rate with that, even though it's 2%. Whereas Aylmer goes down to $968,000 second year, and then 3% over that from then on. That was their basic proposal. That I got from Michelle and Brent, and
Okay.
that's how I understood those numbers. So that's why there is the benefit in money terms, at least.
Okay, thank you.
So if I may, so it sounds like we've gone around all the various pieces of additional background information, or at least we have a process to develop this list of the background information that I think we'd like to bring to the public. So can we switch to the next item and just start talking about what would be the public consultation strategy? Any thoughts on that?
I'll maybe start the discussion, Madam Chair. There are some challenges with the current situation in terms of holding public meetings and things like that. There is an opportunity, depending on how we can get messaging out there. There would be an opportunity potentially to do some online surveys, to do even some paper surveys or questionnaires for individuals if there's an ability to be able to distribute them. We can certainly put information on our website, on our social media to allow people to submit comments. But honestly, I think probably the best solution right now in the current situation is probably to develop some type of online survey that individuals could fill out and provide that narrative. So there are certain things that I think have already been brought up during the discussions in terms of, are we satisfied with the current OPP policing model? If we were to make a change and certain things were able, I think there's a way to be able to develop some questions that we can get some feedback from the public. If you were to look at things, the cost is currently this for the OPP model. There's a potential to reduce the costs and have Aylmer do it. Are there potential concerns? Would you be concerned about, representation, or would you be concerned? So there's a number of things that we've already identified. The consultants have actually identified in their background study that we need to be able to look at, and some of the questions that your own Councillor Widner said that he'd spoken to some people and there were certain things that they were concerned about. So I think we could ask some of those questions. And I think at the end of the day, and if we step back a little bit, when we asked Aylmer for the costing in the very beginning, it was because there was an argument about that it would be cheaper. This particular proposal was sought in the beginning. The councillors who were on council at the time will remember that it was all about whether or not Aylmer could do it cheaper than OPP. And that discussion had taken place, I've been told, for even decades long. The discussion comes up periodically. Would it be beneficial? How could we make it a win-win? And the discussion was that it would be a win for Aylmer because they would have somebody else helping to be able to cover some of their administrative costs, which would make it cheaper for them to operate their police force. And then the win for Malahide would be that it would either be compatible or lower cost for Malahide and potentially increase the level of service. And so that's the messaging that has come back, is, that it would be a win-win for both communities. Not to say that there has been, and at no point was there any concern about the type of policing and that OPP wasn't doing a good job, wasn't delivering on it. It was strictly, the initial assessment was done based on cost. And could it be cheaper for both communities and have a win-win situation? The consultants have come back and suggested to you that yes, it would be cheaper. Now it's a matter of, are you at a point where you're comfortable because of dollars in moving forward and attempting to negotiate a formalized contract, knowing that there are still some variables that come into play, but those are things that you need to go for, that need to be done before. There's no advantage to having staff or anyone else go back and negotiate really detailed set of contract and everything if we know right off the bat that people aren't interested in switching, had a lot of time and effort on that. So that's where we are today. So it's how do we get that information, and I'm sure that there's a lot of opportunity at the moment online methodologies.
However, I will say that this is a fairly emotional, when we're talking about safety, it's a nuanced topic. This is not waste management. And do you want to pick up twice a week, or twice a month, or 4 times a month? So I was just looking at my news feed, and I think the province is moving into stage 3, where we will be able to have indoor gatherings of 50. And I feel strongly that we need a Q&A session. So I think we need multiple modes. So I really like the notion of an online survey, particularly for satisfaction, for input on responding to specific questions that we have. But then what do we do with the questions they have? And what if they want to clarify something? Because there can be a cost savings in terms of dollars, but as we talked about earlier, there will be trade-offs. So there's always a cost. So I think what I would be looking for, and I don't know how others feel, but it would be multiple modes, I think, of input, including, and if we need to organize 2 or 3, if the maximum is 50, and then to allow, whatever response people can sign up. And other thoughts? Councillor Widner.
Yeah, just reading the same article, you can have 100 outside. So if we knew we had a beautiful day, we'd have it in the ball diamond or something like that. I mean, we're in a parking lot. That's not a big deal, I don't think so. I think it's a great idea because with the talks with amalgamation, we found out loud and clear what the public wanted, and we had a really good response with the crowd we had that night. So I think we owe it to them. If they want to complain, that's the time to do it. If they want to say yes, that's the time to do it also. So I think it's a good idea.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I apologize. I have been in meetings the entire morning. I haven't seen the stage 3 announcement yet. So no, if that's an opportunity for in-person sessions, then for sure. And we can do it based on registration ahead of time to make sure that we only do gathering. I would caution council in scheduling an outside one, only because you can't control the weather. And it could go to a lot of work to be able to get this ready, and then it could fizzle out. I would suggest instead a series of in-person sessions. We could do one in Port Bruce, one in Springfield, and even one, potentially at the complex in Aylmer for people that are closer to. We could schedule a number of and ask people to register in advance. That because of the limitation on the numbers, I don't see any difficulty with that at all. And then be able to get that in-person dialogue as well. And if we have some of the background information, the chart prepared ahead of time, as the Deputy Mayor has indicated, we've got some comparison, we've got some information that we can actually present and allow them to have the public to have some discussion and debate before we move forward as well.
Would it also make sense to have representatives from both departments?
Yes.
So they could answer questions the public might have?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
absolutely.
Yeah,
I would
I think
suggest,
yep.
I would
Aaron?
suggest that if we should go first with the online survey and actually solicit questions or inquiries from the public, so that when we do have the in-person, we have answers ready rather than, receiving questions at that point in time. And then if we have department reps, they are better in a position to respond as well at that point.
Yeah, that's a good idea to kind of do it in a 2-stage approach, because as part of the survey, as you indicated, Arun, is that we solicit questions. What would you like to know? What would be your concerns, or what? Yeah. So and then including some satisfaction input on the existing service level. So if we're in agreement roughly, then to do it at a 2-stage, so an online/paper survey, and followed then by public meetings. What timing are we looking at? What would you recommend? Are we talking about late summer for online and then September for public consultation when everybody's back from?
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think we would want to get our chart finalized and have all of us be comfortable in that information first. And then that might also help us to structure our questions for this survey by having that detail. And so I think what I would like to do, or what I would suggest to the committee, is that if staff and the deputy, well, all of us, we can circulate things electronically, but if we can finalize that chart first or get it in a better position, schedule another committee meeting where we can then double check to make sure we're satisfied with everything we've got so far. And then we can have a little bit of dialogue about the types of questions that we want in the survey, and similar process that we did with the waste management plan, but a little bit different. And then once this group is satisfied with the type of questions and the type of direction we want to go in the survey, then I think we would be able to roll that out. So whether it ends up being late August or whether it ends up being early September, I think it will be dependent on what we can pull together over the next a couple or 3 weeks with the chart, as with the background comparison information first. And we can move forward on that basis.
Okay. When's the next tax installment? I should probably know that, but. Is it
That's September 15th.
Okay.
So
there's-
tax bills will go out in August, mid-August roughly.
Right. So there might be, and I don't know if you've agreed to that in the past, I can't remember, in terms of either promoting the public or sending the survey. If the survey is
Yeah.
done then we can
For
decide.
our own purposes, we have included inserts in our tax mailings. And I think actually if we can get that coordinated ahead of time, I think that would be really good. Either to, even if it's just a single insert without the survey necessarily in whole, but maybe just the links and the information to it. It could be a separate insert in the tax bills. We know everyone's going to get that. And then that will allow us, even from when the bills go out, it's at least 3.5 weeks, I believe, when the bills go out to when the due date is. We could then allow people to even print off, drop off, whatever. We can get that information over the course of that month, and then maybe schedule the public meetings in October after we've had a chance to review that information.
Okay, so that could. Mr. Mayor, would you like to take your chair back?
Okay, well, I am back. My technology here at this level is just driving me nuts. At any rate, I did hear the conversation on the phone, but I couldn't talk to you, so I am now back. At any rate, obviously we'd have a plan for the notification, and as far as the public consultation, I think that's a good idea to do an online survey on the initial one and then go to a public survey later on. So, anything else before on the public consultation? Okay, seeing none, our next committee meeting. Do you want to have a regular meeting, Michelle, or at the call of the chair?
I think maybe at the call of the chair, although I know that everybody's schedules are becoming more challenging with the summer. So if we could maybe pick something early August, I'm going to suggest, to give us a couple of weeks anyways to be able to look at developing the chart. And then that gives us also potentially another week or so to be able to finalize and then get it ready that we can start to have it disseminated with the tax installment date. And that will have to, even though it doesn't go out till the middle of August, we need to have it ready, printed and ready to go in the mail. So my suggestion would be the first week of August, but I don't know what everybody's plans are.
When's the civic holiday, Michelle? What date is that?
I think it's the 3rd.
I thought it was late this year.
Is it?
The first Monday is the 7th, so that's Labor Day. Oh, sorry, I'm into September.
Yeah.
No, it's 3rd, I think.
The 3rd, yes.
Yes, the civic holiday is the 3rd, yes.
The 10th?
3rd.
I know, but the 10th.
Oh, the
He's
10th.
suggesting
Yeah,
the
10th
10th
is
for our
good.
next meeting date.
Yeah.
That would be too late in order for us to
Okay.
have something finalized and printed, ready to go in the tax bills. I would suggest that week of the 3rd, one day that week would give us enough time to be able to finalize. Or even the previous week, the July 28th week, which would be 2 weeks from now.
Okay, Monday is usually pretty free. Is everybody good with the 27th at 1 o'clock?
I can't, I'm sorry. So I'm unavailable until the 30th.
Okay.
So I can do the 30th or the 31st.
Thirty 31st at 1 o'clock then, the Friday?
Or earlier, doesn't matter.
I
1
can't
o'clock.
do the 31st.
Is that good?
I won't be available on the 31st, but
I think you should be here for that.
Yeah. Can
How
we
are
do?
things on the 30th? The
30th
afternoon
is
of the
fine.
30th.
30th I'm good with.
30th I can live with, 1 o'clock?
1 o'clock on the 30th?
Yep.
Okay. And only just because I know this is how difficult it is to try to pick a date. So I want
Yeah.
to pick one today. So August 30th at 1 p.m. Perfect.
Michelle, us poor people, we're available. every
Okay,
week.
so I need a mover and second.
I'll move, Dave.
Seconder,
Sure.
all in favor? Carried, okay.
All
Thank
right,
you
so
all.
we'll meet
Michelle,
back here then on August 30th at 1.
July 30th, Michelle.
July.
Sorry, July 30th. Thank you all.
Good. Thank you.
Okay, bye now.